Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Dianna Dini.
Hey, I ran into this phenomena at one point in my career, and luckily I have not received any questions about this. So this one's not a listener or a visitor to Ascendo question. But have you ever, so this was a client, and they were making some high zoots. I don't know what it did. They never told me. And apparently it was like super secret type thing, but it was.
Those are always the best.
Yeah. But it was electronics and they're trying to make it and they were having all these problems. And part of the process was that they were also the repair center. They were the only ones allowed to open the box and repair anything in it.
Okay.
And I said, why do you do that? Why don't you let the military do it? It was a military product. And because we don't make any money making the things. We only make money repairing them.
Okay.
And
so they're forcing everybody to get things repaired by them.
Well, they had to, because the only place to go. And does that create an incentive to not make a reliable product? And he goes, yeah, how'd you know?
Oh.
There was no incentive whatsoever to design in reliability, it had to function. And it was, cutting edge technology as far as I could tell. They're making all these, the pictures of the, with the quantum computers, they have like these trays of gold and cables on them and all of those stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They didn't look like that. But they were not your typical electronics components in some of the core pieces of it. But they had circuit boards that had power supplies on it and did stuff like that and everything. I was like, what are the most common failures? Well, the power supply fails quite often. Would you ever think about fixing that? He goes, oh, no, there's no incentive to do that. We just want to be able to count the numbers, make sure that we have they asked me to help them with not failure analysis, field failure analysis, to understand that they
how much
figured
money
out
they could make.
How much money they could make is probably the right phrase. So they never said that, but it was the, it's like, really? And they're out of business about 3 years after, and they were in my hometown. And they went out of business because the military said, you make stuff that fails too often. And when I'm looking at the root cause of that stuff, it's the military contracting. So they want, you do the design at this fixed price or at this limited budget. And so they didn't even make prototypes. So, which was my first clue that their design for reliability process was kind of broken, not existent. They did not make, so their procurement group, when they needed 10 100 puff capacitors for the order of 10 systems, they ordered 10 capacitors. There wasn't even a single extra one. If a lead broke off or it was a faulty component, they ordered one more to replace it.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, this is not sustainable. And it wasn't.
So this isn't my story. This is my dad's story. Now he's a designer, and injection molding was his thing. Mm-hmm. And he could design injection molded parts to be within 1,000th of an inch. That was his specialty.
That's cool.
And high precision stuff. Mm-hmm. But earlier in his days, he designed a yard spinner. Do you know what those are? They're the lawn ornaments that it's in a stake.
Stick a hose.
Put the stake in the ground, and then it spins.
And do you put a hose on it and shoots water all over the place? Because I played with one of those.
No, it's purely decorative.
Oh, okay.
It's like a
whirligig kind of thing.
Yeah, a whirligig. Well, he was designing one that looked like a daisy.
Okay.
and maybe you've seen them before, but it was a daisy and it had a big brown head on it, and it was on a metal stake, and he designed it, and they sent it back to him and said, well, this looks really robust. He said, it is. It'll last for years. Because he was thinking of, his grandma, like putting a
Hmm.
stake in the yard and having her enjoy it for years. They said,
Hmm.
well, no, we want you to make it weaker so it'll break because we
Make sure
want
that
we want
6
we want
ounces of snow will break it.
yeah, we want people to go out and buy new ones, not just buy one for their whole lifetime.
That's right.
And yeah, he didn't. That wasn't like I mean that was the job, but that wasn't my dad. He didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't want to design things like that. So uh, it was years later. He ended up designing his own yard spinner, and that thing, like, you can run it over with a truck, and it's still gonna spin.
It's still
And
working.
yeah, the Yard Star. It's a star shaped spinner, and he
Hmm.
made them in all sorts of colors. Uh, but I often wonder if that was in response to him releasing that daisy to the world because
Oh
he
yeah, seen
yeah,
how
he
bad it
just
was.
and I mean, that doesn't feel good for a designer, I don't
No,
think, to
no.
design I I guess there are good reasons for things to be planned to break. Sometimes that's the function of
Well,
the product or for safety reasons and
yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that.
There's a table saw gadget that you can install in a table saw. And I've seen it demoed a number of times, and it's to prevent you getting your finger cut, if you're using a table saw, which is unfortunately, a common problem with table saws is that it's a spinning blade and you're pushing material through it. And if you don't pay attention, it'll cut your hand off. Um, or fingers off or all
Oh,
kinds of bad things.
I saw a video about one of these products and they were using a hot dog to
Yeah,
simulate a finger and it was still uncomfortable to watch.
it was. And
But anyway,
it just barely touches the hot dog or allegedly your finger. And it, the product underneath the table just fires this block into the table, into the saw blade, which instantly stops it. And it's like a 2 milliseconds or something like that. So the hot dog would get just a little mark, a little graze on it, but hard, it wouldn't even break the skin of it. Yet it destroys the blade. And it's expensive to replace it, the mechanism again. Yet it is a safety feature. There's no doubt about it. And it's like I would be so careful around my table saw because I don't want to crash my blade and not be able to work the rest of the day.
never mind your fingers.
Oh yeah, well, just keep your fingers out of the blade. But a lot of people have said that unsuccessfully. Um, but that's, I think, it's a very robust and reliable product to destroy itself, basically, to save
Yeah.
your hand, which is fine. Yet there's a whole nother venue for these things. Is think of the early vehicles. They I think I'm thinking of not the earliest ones, but say in the 50s, they would last 2 or 3 years. And there'd be a new model out that had electric windows or heated seats or safety belts or, it was sort of like the smartphones when they came out. People were
Yeah.
updating every year because, oh, look, now it has a camera or now it has this or it has this memory or it has this feature or this speed or it works in these systems or.
You're listing all these things. I'm like, yeah, these are all things I like.
But the first phone had almost none of that. They
Mm.
had a phone and limited web and almost no apps to it. And then they said, I think a couple of years ago, it was on the desktops from Apple. It says we're not going to support any applications that are 32-bit anymore. It has to be 64-bit,
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
and kind of force either the upgrade or the obsolescence of a whole raft of useful programs and applications. Um,
Yeah. So kind of a forced obsolescence because of progress
right.
in technology. Is that
And
what you
it's
mean?
right. And it's part of the that market, say the iPhone or the phone market, smartphone market is, what do customers really want? How do I get market share by having the latest, greatest must have feature? And how do I keep up with the Joneses? All kinds of things are going on that do that. And technology is advancing. That memory is faster and smaller. And you can put a lot more in a phone. Batteries are a lot longer lived. All kinds of stuff are get. But at some point, like cars, the market's going to say, well, I don't want to buy a new one every year or every 2 years. I want it to last 5, 10 years and not worry about it.
Yeah.
And so it will flatten out at some point. And at that point, the companies that say, well, the battery will only last 5 years and it'll cost you the equivalent of a new phone just to replace the battery. So in those cases, it's kind of the planned obsolescence because they could make it easy to replace batteries. They could, but they don't. And it's part of a trade-off in a business is how much discomfort or hassle is it versus buying a new one.
Well, and there's this whole movement out there for design for repairability.
The right to repair laws are showing
Yes.
up all kinds of places. Yeah. And I think that's part of the phone system and part of cars. You know, I know agricultural equipment has so much custom stuff in it that the big producers of those vehicles were saying you can only get it repaired at one of our locations. Well, if you're in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and that nearest location is 600 miles away, that's a non-starter. So
Yeah.
no pun intended, but it's a problem for them to get that equipment to the right place to get repaired or
Yeah, I
fly that
don't
person out.
the computers. So it used to you used to think of it like any other thing that you would buy, that
Mm-hmm.
you would invest in it and it would last you for years and you'd be able to keep it and use it. But like now my parents, I help them with their technology,
Mm-hmm.
and people were saying your desktop is too old. It's running a Windows version that's too old. You're going to have to get a new one. So it was, I don't know, a couple of years ago, they got a nice little laptop
Mm-hmm.
and they never use it. They're still using the desktop. So I was in and mom said, I haven't had that on in a long time. So I opened it up and I pressed go and it started booting up. It said, "Oh," and it booted up fine. And I said, "Check for updates." And it literally said, "Whoa, check the date on this system. Is this the right date?" Because they hadn't had it on for so long. And then there were so many updates. It's like, wait, this date can't be right. You better double
Yeah,
check
you
it.
better check the date. Yeah.
So, but it took like an hour and a half to do all the
All the
updates
updates.
for everything.
Oh man.
Thankfully, it handled it itself with what
Mm-hmm.
update had to happen first.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, you know, they had it worked out like that, so I didn't have to
Yeah.
do much. But yeah, it was a shift of thinking because, from machine shop stuff and injection molding things. I mean, there's been advances to that, but generally you buy that equipment and you keep it for years and you
Yeah.
maintain it. But like the computers and the gaming systems and the smartphones and everything are just not like that.
No.
And
And part of that is the argument is, well, there's new features and capabilities and stuff, and we're putting out new models. And the contrary side is people are saying, well, you're just planning it to be obsolete. You're not going to support it long enough. Like commercial products or industrial products. If somebody said, we're going to sell you this motor for your equipment and it's only going to last for 2 years, then you have to buy a new one because it'll be better then. Like,
mhm.
no factory's going to sign up for that. I want a motor. I want it to last for 50 years without any problems whatsoever. We'll put a new bearing on it every 20 years and that's it. And
Yeah.
it's part of it is what's market accept, what's all those kind of things apply and so on. And I was at a conference. We were just chatting about conferences in our last episode, and it was a break between papers being presented. They were switching presenters, and they were having trouble with their presentation loading in the computer to present,
Uh,
kind of thing. So we had a few minutes, and so I said, talking to the guy next to me and says, "What do you do?" He says, I make, and I won't name the company name. He says, "I make white appliances like washers, dryers, dishwashers, stuff like that." Oh, cool. And he says, "I just talked to my grandmother who's wondering, if she could get a replacement for her washing machine. So you might know something about that." Well, what does she have now? She has a 1949 cast iron washing machine from this particular company, and it has a toggle switch so that she turns it on and it runs through the cycle. It has only one built-in cycle process: agitate, wash, rinse, agitate, wash, rinse, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it turns off. There's no bells, there's no whistles, there's no touchpad. And he said, "How long has she been using this?" Well, and at that time it was just a bit over 50 years, and she wants another one. I don't know why. And he goes, "No, we don't have those anymore." And I said, "Why not? They work." And he says, "Well, if it works for that long, we'd be out of business." And he said, "Well, what do you do?" He says, "Well, the marketing folks figured out that if the appliance at like a $500 price point lasts for 10 years with good service and just does what it's supposed to do with no trouble, that they're very, very likely to buy the same brand again." So we're going to do a 10-year warranty, give it a promise that it'll work for you for 10 years. We work really hard to make sure it works for 10 years and fails before the end of the 11th year. And I said, "Do you put time bombs in this thing or something?" No. It's like, think of how much it costs to ship a cast iron frame, for an appliance, for a washing machine. And I goes, "Yeah, that'd be pretty spendy." And he said, "So we use aluminum and we thin that out. We don't have as many braces on it, but it has enough structure that any of the crack propagations or vibration related stuff will fail after 10 years. But those cracks are there at year 9. It's starting to go." And we could put in more robust bearings on systems and have you do lubrication on it and stuff like that. And it'll last a long, long time. But we do sealed bearings that the sealants will probably degrade at about 10 years in normal day-to-day use. And so they did a bunch of research, but it was market driven, is that if it lasts long enough, they're likely to buy it again. And it's the same with vehicles. Like if you buy a brand of vehicle and it works well for you for however long you expect it to work for you, you're likely to go into that same dealership, into that same brand. And so it's part of, it's not like they know exactly when it's going to fail, but when I looked at some of their data, I had the chance to work with one of their divisions at one point. It was a hockey stick. It was almost no failures whatsoever. It was usually installation damage or transport damage, or when a homeowner moved it to a new location and didn't balance it, stuff like that. It was the types of failures they got, but it was very rare. And then by 10 years and 6 months, it was 20% had failed. And the next year, another 30% would fail. It was just amazing how well they designed it so that it was robust enough, but not too robust.
Yeah.
Now we just need to convince everybody that want a washing machine to last 20 years, and then they'd have to change their formula.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, but with some things, now, okay, I'm going to reference lithium batteries, but because those are a disposal problem, right?
Yep.
You need to dispose of them properly. So there are things in place for the manufacturers of lithium batteries to have to set up a program to be able to receive the spent ones so they can be disposed of properly. Is that's different than this right to repair law, right? Like, is this?
Well, the waste diversion type stuff and putting the burden, I think part of that law that you have to take it back when it's hazard waste. And so that lots of locations don't want a bunch of hazardous stuff getting dumped into regular trash.
Yeah, right.
And whether that's successful or not is hard to say. But it also puts an emphasis on manufacturers to make stuff that doesn't use that technology or minimizes that use that technology or makes it last longer so that it's less of a program to recycle them or to bring them back. I remember one group was trying to do that with pallets. Instead of chopping down another tree to create a new pallet, is that they had to be a standard size and shape, and there's different grades of them for different types of things stacked on them, but so that they were like reusable shopping bags. A pallet was a pallet, and you could use it over and over again.
Mm.
Try to get more life out of them.
I've seen those for I've seen plastic pallets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is, I have different problems with that, but it's
Yeah, right.
but the idea is that I agree with your father's approach to it is like, why would I want to make it so that it falls apart easily? It's in the military client that like, well, we don't make any money. And there's structural problems with the way those contracts are written in the military that forces vendors to stay in business by not paying attention to reliability. And then the Army and the Navy and wherever, everybody gets flustered because these things don't work like they should over time. Um, the Yet planned obsolescence has a marketing reason, it has business reasons behind it. It continues to evolve. Vehicles used to have like a 2-3 year lifespan, and that was kind of expected. If you babied it along, you could get an antique on your hands. But there's a reason there's not a lot of 57 Chevys on the road today.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they they rusted out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the idea is that, and I think my biggest takeaway in this concept of planned obsolescence or just things wearing out is it's you can make it more robust, and it'll be more expensive, it'll cost more to ship, it may find the appropriate market, people that appreciated lawn ornaments that would last 20 years. Yet understanding the market is what drives the business, is what do they really want, and
Yeah.
connecting that to getting more sales and getting more return customers and stuff is a real driver for a lot of organizations. So perfect reliability is an admirable goal, yet it may run contrary to what your business and market want. So it's
And there's enough consumer interest that I know of some businesses anyway that that's part of their business model
mhm,
is to design for repairability and to be mindful about the materials they choose. And then that's part of I guess that's part of their marketing
yep,
campaign and their position in the market is because they're paying attention or they want to provide things to consumers that care about that stuff.
yep. It's I think it's a good sign that folks are waking up to say, yeah, I don't want the free toaster from my bank because it'll only last 3 months and then I have to get another one. Once you get used to a toaster, you don't want to change.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just me, I guess. But I want a good toaster. But the idea of create a new model that has a new feature just because we want you to throw away your old one, I think is a faulty logic, and for all kinds of things in the throwaway economy. That's what I'm thinking of it as.
And and people aren't, people are kind of wise to it too. Like it was they realized that one of the smartphones, like the new version came out, and so
Mm-hmm.
then the company like did something to the software to like really degrade the performance of the old one.
Oh
Once
yeah,
the
I
new one,
remember that. Yeah, I
yeah,
heard about that.
they figured that out. So I mean, people aren't dumb,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
we're getting smarter about it anyway.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's part of the process though. So it's, I when I talk to reliability folks, they get frustrated sometimes with, we'll make it less durable, or we, we need to make it repairable, or we need to make it uh it only needs to last 5 years. That's it. We don't care about 50 years. And all of those are, I don't know whether or not I'd say they're all valid, but they all are part of doing business in a consumer world where we're
Hmm.
selling stuff to other folks. And part of it is understanding the dynamics of, especially if you can figure out, well, if I make a durable lawn art spinning thing and we make 15 different varieties of them that look really good as a cluster, then we sell 15 of them this year versus one every year for 15 years. But they all last. And then their neighbors notice it. And where'd you get that and stuff? If that gets through the intellect of the organization, then it's a different business model. But if it's just make it cheap so they buy a new one next year because a bird landed on it, then no, I don't agree with that approach.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't think anything in my house is broken, except Diane was mentioning something just before we hit record. So I think I have to go fix something.
Oh, really? I have some things I have to fix, but it was because of use error.
User error.
Yeah, my chainsaw is still broken. I still have to fix that, and a few other things. But it's something I enjoy, and it's rewarding to be able to do it if you can.
Well, do you have a fracas system for the house?
No.
Just checking.
Everybody's submitting problems to. Right. I already get that.
Oh, okay.
That's part of the cognitive load I carry every day.
Oh, okay. See. Yeah, it's the trouble of being the IT person for the community, for your house.
Well, I am not that. I delegated that to somebody else.
Oh, there you go. Good for you.
But where someone else picks it up, I pick up other stuff. So it works out in the end.
It works out. Well, if you're listening to this and going, what in the world are you guys talking about? Planned obsolescence. It's real. It happens. And for a variety of different reasons. And you may or may not have that scenario. I think there's a philosophy or approach to, if you're doing it deliberately just to maximize, short-term profits, then I have a problem with that. And I hope you do too. So if you got a comment or a question or an idea for another topic to talk about, or some thoughts or success stories of dealing with planned obsolescence type attitudes, let us know. Head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. You can find a couple of ways to get in touch with us. Good old-fashioned email actually works. You can find Dianna and I and the other hosts of the show on our contact information on our About pages, plus on LinkedIn. So plenty of ways for you to get in touch with us. Yeah, no, I don't have a fracas system, just in case you're wondering. But
no,
no,
you probably naturally do it at this point.
It's a whiteboard
without even having an official system.
We have a whiteboard that's kind of like, here's the to-do list, so it's sort of like that. What's the status of, we have check-ins once a week, meetings with coffee and no.
I have to think about the way I'm managing the household here.
There you go. You have all the tools.
All these things. Yeah. I got some able-bodied young people that could do more things.
Yeah. Just don't have them listen to the episode.
Because it'll tip them off.
That's right. Let's bring. All right. Well, good luck with that, Dianna. We'll have to talk about household, reliability management this week. That might be another topic.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Dianna. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye, Fred.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.